So we have known everything from the beginning. As readers, eavesdropping on the conversation between Raphael and Adam. Eavesdropping, interesting word, isn't it? Although it has a different origin, nonetheless, it gives the idea that Eve could never be a part of that angelic conversation. She was the outsider, as if from the beginning marked as the fallible, the margin, the other. And then it happens, the worst imaginable to Adam. And who is responsible? Let us find out about sin, transgression, and most important of all, choice in the longest book of Paradise Lost. From the very beginning of this book, we will notice a shift in Milton's tone, and he actually talks about it. And in the beginning of this book, we see a kind of an invocation again, where he is seeking some assistance because now he has to shift his tone to a more tragic one. But then there is a doubt in him, and that doubt is very interesting. He asks, if answerable style I can obtain of my celestial patroness. Patroness is somebody who is guiding you, advising you, helping you. So it's the muse. He's not naming the muse here. He is saying that if my muse would help me. So there is definitely a kind of going down in the tone of confidence that we had seen him have in book 1 especially. He outlines the central tragedy, that this is going to be the content of this book, particularly the betrayal and revolt of mankind against God. And this disobedience, it leads to not just a rift between heaven and earth. Till now, heaven and earth, they were all like together, bound together, connected. The rift will not just be between heaven and earth, but also, perhaps more prominently, expressed in Book 9 itself, between man and his soul companion, woman. So he begins with a comparison to classical tragedies. He had always said that I'm going to do something different, something higher than what is already attempted in prose or rhyme. And then he will keep on referring to these classical models of literature. Here he is comparing to specific classical epics, and then he establishes that my theme is more heroic. And at the same time, just like in book 1, he had said, what in me is dark, illumine, that is, there is something dark in him. Here also he is talking about some specific problems that he might have in doing something he's planning, and he's actually mentioning them as age, cold climate, or years. So he knows about his advancing years, but he is not actually talking about his blindness, because he somehow perhaps feels that it's not a handicap for him. It's not limiting his imagination, or as we have seen, it has actually flourished more. Now, when the invocation part is over, we see that it's nightfall and Satan has returned. The sun sets, followed by Hesperus, the star that is the twilight star. And then night spreads across the earth, covering the horizon. So it's like a setting is built gradually. Okay, the environment changes, light turns to darkness, and in this twilight moment, there is self doubt and there is propensity to transgress the will of God. Okay. Now, Satan, why has he returned? He wants to take revenge. Fine. He journeys through darkness, returning at midnight, because he doesn't want to be detected by the heavenly watch, the angels watching over them. And he circles the earth multiple times so that he cannot be detected. And then he finds a secret entrance. So he does it for 7 days. So he's almost acting like a satellite of earth, moving around earth, and then he finds a secret entrance on the 8th night. He enters through that hidden spot near the Tigris river, and he plans to hide so that he can think about what he's about to do next. Now, in order to hide in a convincing way and fool the guards. He knows that he cannot remain in his present appearance. So he looks for a vessel, a container, a real body which he can inhabit, which he can get into, so that he is not detected. And he identifies the serpent or the snake as a very fit hiding place. He decides to enter the serpent because the serpent, although at that point of time it was nothing evil, okay, it was not a satanic thing at all. It was only after Satan chose to get into the serpent that the serpent became a vessel for Satan. All right. But it's not like the serpent was created any different from any other animal. It was not inherently evil. But somehow its shape gave a kind of sliness to it, which suited the purpose of Satan. And how does Satan feel about it? Getting inside the body of a serpent. He is not very enthusiastic about it because he has wings, he can fly about. Look at the kind of restrictions he is imposing on himself. It's like kind of downgrading himself. It's not upgrading. And he actually says, "O foul descent." This is line 163. "Oh, foul descent." So it's like he is falling. So it's not just about the fall of man, it's also Satan falling from one stature to the next through the books. "O foul descent, that I, who erst contended with gods to sit the highest." Earlier I used to compete with gods. "Am now constrained into a beast and mixed with bestial slime." You know what? Snakes are very slimy. "This essence to incarnate and imbrute, that to the height of deity aspired. But what will not ambition and revenge descend to?" So he thinks that if you have ambition and if you have revenge as your motivation, then it doesn't matter how far you fall, how low you sink, because it's worth it. So it's a matter of priorities for Satan. And then we might feel that what is the revenge that he's talking about? He is saying that I want to take revenge against God despite knowing that it might cause me more misery. So after he possesses the serpent and he takes the shape of a black mist to make it more accessible to the body of the serpent. And while he does this, dawn breaks. And as dawn breaks, Adam and Eve, they rise and, offer their morning praise to God. And they discuss the daily task in Eden. Eve makes a suggestion here. Now, before going into that suggestion, I want you to notice what Eve actually says here. Adam, "Well, may we labor still to dress this garden." So their work is to look after the garden. "Still to tend plant, herb and flower are pleasant task enjoined, but till more hands and aid us, the work under our labor grows luxurious by restraint." That means the more they prune the trees, but they are taking care of the garden. And the difference between a garden and a wild forest is that in the garden you need to prune the trees to keep them restricted so that they don't grow wild and out of balance. Now the point is, the more you prune a tree, the more it will tend to grow. It actually helps in growth. So the point is, restraint, the idea of restraint, that is the idea of control, is not always proportionate to the idea of reduction, rather than proportionate to the idea of more growth. So keep this in mind because this will come handy later. Anyway, what suggestion she makes is that they should divide their labor because, the garden needs a lot of work, and if they work separately, then they can achieve better results. Now, what does Adam say to this suggestion? Adam thinks that their safety might be compromised and she might be threatened by some enemy, and if they are divided, then their strength will also be divided. So he wants to stay together. But then Eve takes his reply in a different way. She thinks that he is questioning her faith, her strength, and She is not very happy about it, and she says, "But that thou shouldst my firmness therefore doubt." So you're doubting my firmness to God or thee, because we have a foe may tempt it. I expected not to hear. So see, we already see them arguing over a point, although this argument is not at all a bitter one. They are arguing with their points, and Eve is presented as a person who is giving an alternative viewpoint, and she is saying, "His violence thou fearest not." She is saying that whoever this enemy is, that enemy cannot kill us because, well, we do not have death yet, and then it cannot harm us in any physical way because we are living in paradise. We are immune to those things. So then, are you saying that this enemy who will not be able to kill me or hurt me in any way will still affect me? That means you are doubting me. So this is Eve's line of argument. His fraud is then thy fear. So you are fearing that he might undertake something which is fraudulent, which plain infers, which shows thy equal fear that my firm faith and love can by his fraud be shaken or seduced. And then that's like emotional blackmail. She actually says that if she faces temptation and doesn't fall for it, then it will only make her stronger, her faith stronger. Adam gives her a final caution and says that stay close because you never know what shape temptation can take. But Eve makes this independent decision that no, I'm going to go and work separately. Let us not then suspect our happy state. She is giving a kind of a reassurance to Adam that look, we are in a happy state. Why are you questioning this? Because you should have faith in our Maker that if this place is happy, if we are perfect, then why should we fear? Let us not then suspect our happy state left so imperfect by the Maker wise as not secure to single or combined. Frail is our happiness if this be so. So if we are always suffering from self-doubt, if we are always bothered and anxious that this happiness will be gone, then I don't call this happiness at all. Okay, she reminds me of Lady Macbeth's speech and Macbeth's idea. They said to be thus is nothing but to be safely thus. So this idea of feeling content and safe, that is important for Eve. When she says, Eden where no Eden, thus exposed. So what's the point of calling this place Eden? What's the point of calling this place paradise if we can't feel safe in it? She departs, and when she is going off, she is described as a goddess-like figure. Adam watches her leave, and he still wishes that she had not left. She promises Adam that I'll come back by noon, but she doesn't know that it's not going to be the same person who is returning. She's not going to be the same Eve. So Satan, in the form of a serpent, he is searching for Adam and Eve. He is intending to corrupt them. And somehow he had already made a choice that it's Eve whom I'm going to corrupt. Now you might have a question, why does he make such a choice? Alright. But before coming to that, let's look at Satan's reaction when he looks at Eve, who is tending to the garden. Upon seeing Eve, Satan is kind of stunned. He, in fact, forgets why he is here. Her graceful innocence, her every air of gesture or lest action overawed his malice, and with rapine sweet bereaved his fearness of the fierce intent it brought. Malice, fearness, things which were there in Satan, they got suspended. That space the evil one abstracted stood. So it was a momentary pause, a space in time from his own evil, and from the time remained stupidly good, of enmity disarmed. That momentary pause where even Satan turned possibly good, stupidly good. So good is stupidity here. Of guile, of hate, of envy, of revenge. All these negativity, that he was harboring in him was somehow suspended when he first looks at Eve working in the garden. He falls in love. But then he knows that this is not for him. Hatred resurfaces, reminding him of his mission. Thoughts, whither have you led me? So he's kind of scolding himself. That what am I thinking? With what sweet compulsion, thus transported to forget what hither brought us? As he is talking in like plural terms. It's as if he is not just one individual, but the entire host of rebel angels working through him. And he might also say this deliberately because he is inside the body of the serpent. So he is already treating himself as a plural because he is not a singular entity here. Whatever he does, the serpent does. So it's always us. Hate, not love, nor hope of paradise for hell. So I have not come here to hope for paradise because I will not be granted a stay in this place, a stay with this woman. Hope here to taste of pleasure, but all pleasure to destroy. My job is not to seek pleasure but destroy it. Save what is in destroying other joy to me is lost. The only joy I can find is the joy of destroying things. So he regains his malice, decides to tempt Eve, perceiving her as the vulnerable one. So he makes a choice. He adopts a pleasing, attractive form and behaves in a way that Eve notices that there's something different about this serpent. Now, you have to remember one thing, that animals, beasts who were roaming about, Adam and Eve, they were quite aware of their behavior, their capabilities, and they knew that the animals could not harm them. So it was a kind of a very beautiful mutual existence. But Eve noticed that there was something different about this serpent. And there was, because the snake could talk. And what did the snake say to Eve? It started to flatter her. Satan started to tempt Eve first by flattering her looks. You're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. And somehow Satan knows how to get into the mind of others. He knows that there is a lack in her, a kind of a thing that she does not get from others, possibly. And why is this relevant? Because if you remember the time when Eve was born, or she came into being, she was looking at a pond and she looked at her own reflection and she kind of fell in love with it, until a voice told her that, you follow me, and then she reaches Adam. So this love for her own image, this is something that is exploited by Satan, and he begins by flattering her looks. She is wondering, of course, that how can a snake talk and why it's behaving in this friendly manner with me. Then Satan, through the snake, explains that he was also once like the other beasts, focusing on basic needs of life and all. But then he discovered a tree with a beautiful fruit. He had that fruit, and since then he gained reason. So he got promoted in rationality, became at par with humans almost, and he can speak. And he says that the fruit is responsible for my promotion. Now, Eve is very surprised. She thinks that yes, that fruit might be restricted, but then the serpent has got only benefits out of it. She asks where the tree is located. She wants to make sure that this is the forbidden fruit or not. And she actually thinks that maybe I can also taste this fruit. She doesn't know yet that this is the forbidden fruit. Okay, so she wants to know, she is curious about it. And Satan invites her to that place. And while going, he goes on telling her the benefits of eating the fruit, why she should choose it and all. Upon reaching the tree, Eve expresses disappointment that, look, I can't have this. This is contraband. This is banned for me. And she feels that there are so many fruits on this tree, but our journey had been futile because I can't eat it. Now comes the manipulative voice of Satan. First, he asks in a very surprised tone, why should God forbid you this? And while doing this, Satan is actually playing with Eve's questions. Satan knows that it cannot provide an argument to Eve which is not already present in her. She had from the beginning been, you can say, the subversive, the different one, the other, as I was telling you. And so Satan exploited the possibility that maybe she already has these questions in her mind. And he says that, why would God forbid you from eating a fruit which would make you the Lord of the earth? Eve repeats, no, we are not supposed to eat this. And then Satan plays a different card. He wants to hit Eve at her weakest point. She had always been conscious of a difference between herself and Adam. And that difference is the difference of intellect. And this difference is, it's not established through their actions, but it's established through words. Like Raphael considers her to be of lesser intellectual power. Adam considers her to be lesser intellectual power having. So her low intellect is a matter of general idea rather than a matter of established fact. Satan plays with this. He says that eating this fruit will lead to knowledge of good and evil, and that somehow has a different kind of an effect on Eve. And she questions, why is God forbidding us knowledge? What forbids he but to know forbids us good, forbids us to be wise? So this is what Eve is questioning now. So see how she is repeating the words of Satan, but she is convinced because these questions were already there in her. Such prohibitions bind not, but if death bind us with afterbands, what profits then our inward freedom? So if there is always this fear of death, that if we eat the fruit we will die, if the fear of death is always there, can we at all call ourselves happy? In the day we eat of this fair fruit, our doom is we shall die. How dies the serpent? Now she thinks about the warning that God had given them, that if you eat the fruit, you shall die. That means if the serpent ate the fruit, the serpent would have died. But the serpent is alive. So see how she is making use of logic. And in Eve, we see a greater tendency to use logic than faith. In Adam, we see faith more than logic. And the irony is that Adam is still called the more intellectual one. She says, how dies the serpent? He hath eaten and lives, and knows, and speaks, and reasons, and discerns. Irrational till then. So the snake was irrational. Now the snake can speak, and talk, and think, and analyze things. For us alone was death invented. So that means if the serpent ate the fruit, and the serpent had not died, we eat the fruit and we die. This means God had planned death only for us, because God is not giving death to this serpent. It is still alive. Or to us denied this intellectual food. So see, she is the first to associate food with intellect. For beasts reserved. For beasts, it seems. Yet that one beast which first hath tasted envies not. So the point is, she sees that the serpent has eaten the fruit. So look at her point of view. Serpent has eaten the fruit. Now the fruit has not killed the serpent. The fruit has not made the serpent evil, because if it was evil, it would not come to me and share the news, but keep the fruit to itself. Okay. So she is trying to justify eating the fruit as something good, but brings with joy the good befallen him. Author, unsuspect, friendly to man, far from deceit or guile. So snakes were not unfriendly to men, and they were not deceiving creatures so far as Eve's knowledge was concerned. So she feels that this snake, who is not a deceiving creature, comes to me and tells something, then that must be true. What fear I then? Rather, what know to fear under this ignorance of good and evil? I don't have any knowledge of good and evil. So what am I afraid of? Of God or death? Of law or penalty? Here grows the cure of all, this fruit divine, fair to the eye, inviting to the taste, of virtue to make wise. So it's good looking, it is probably very good to taste, and it's going to provide me with wisdom. So why should I stop? What hinders then to reach and feed at once both body and mind? So this is the first time we are seeing man. I'm calling Eve also a man here because she is human. The first time man is not talking about physical sustenance only. The interesting thing is, before the fall, they were supposed to only act like animals, isn't it? Yes, they were praying, they were having beautiful conversations, friendly talk with angels. But what about the mind? The source of knowledge for them was only the ones which were supplied by God through the angels, and that too denied, like Eve was denied the presence. She wasn't part of it. It said that she was not interested in it. Of course, because it was only knowledge that was given in the form of lecture. This was knowledge obtained by herself, and she decides to get this. And the moment she eats the fruit is the moment of crisis that is described along these lines. Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe, suffering, that all was lost. So it's as if the entire universe cried out in pain because Eve had done something horrible. But does Eve feel like that at that moment? What is Eve actually feeling after eating the fruit? Now, the way in which Milton presents this eating of the forbidden fruit and the after effects, it almost appears that that fruit, I'm not calling that an apple, that would be wrong. It was not an apple. It was some peach like fruit, some golden fruit. The moment that fruit was eaten, a kind of intoxication happened. So, possibly that fruit was an intoxicant which gave a feeling of momentary euphoria, heightened intellectual understanding, and then came the aftermath. Then came the kind of hangover which these very potent drugs they induce. So very similar symptoms are described here. So first, Eve doesn't feel bad at all. She feels euphoric, and she experiences enlightenment, gratification, and she praises the tree for its transformative power. And this is a very interesting part. Let's look at what she says. She calls the tree sovereign. Sovereign is usually a king. The greatest god is called sovereign of the world. And here she is addressing the tree as the sovereign. And she says, henceforth my early care. Like all along, she had neglected this tree. They were forbidden to come here, eat it. So they stayed away from this tree. So they did not tend to this tree. But she says that henceforth, my early care, not without song, each morning and due praise shall tend thee. Every morning I will come and I will tend to you. I will give you water. I will help you grow, and I will sing song in praise. So what is it like? Is she turning pagan? And for a Christian, turning pagan is the worst sin possible. And often nature is associated with feminine energy, and it is not surprising that her feminine instincts kick and she feels connected to the tree and almost replaces God as her source of sustenance. She calls the tree the sovereign. An anti-Christian, pagan nature worship is, of course, very, very satanic. She thinks about her actions and she has two choices: whether she should share her newfound knowledge with her husband or she should keep it to herself. Now, it's a very interesting line of argument we see. She's talking to herself in this internal monologue style of writing. First, she thinks, should I go and tell Adam? But to Adam, in what sort shall I appear? Shall I to him make known as yet my change, and give him to partake full happiness with me? So, should I go and tell Adam that, look, this has happened to me, you can also become great and you can have this fruit? Oh, rather not. But keep the odds of knowledge in my power without co partner. Or should I keep this extra knowledge that I have got inside me? So, this is what the tree of knowledge is actually doing. It is making her think logically, analyzing situations. And she feels that she will have an advantage if Adam does not have the fruit. What advantage? She can, address the gap in intellect. Now she is also as intellectual as Adam. So this is very significant. And the way she says, so to add what wants in female sex. What wants in female sex? Knowledge, wisdom, intellect. These are the gaps. And now I have the fruit. I have these things inside me. So I am equal with Adam. So it's a matter of empowerment for her. Equality. The more to draw his love and render me more equal. Such a pitiable thing, right? That means what? That means Eve, before her fall, was quite conscious that she was not equal. She was supposed to be subordinate. And then we begin to question whether Eden was as much Eden to her as it was to Adam, or was it less paradise? And perhaps a thing not undesirable, sometime superior. So she thinks that maybe I have gained so much knowledge that I can not just call myself equal to Adam, but maybe I am superior to Adam. And then she says a very, very important line. For inferior who is free. And she is echoing the words of Satan. And in these very vulnerable moments, we are caught off guard. Are you sympathizing with Eve? Are you sympathizing with Satan? Was Milton sympathizing with these? She is having dual concerns, but then she is having a third concern. What if there is a punishment? She feels that maybe somebody has seen me and I'm going to be punished. Then what would happen? Then God would, kill me. I would die. And then Adam would get lonely again. And God would make another Eve for him. And they will live happily. What would I get? So let me drag this man down with me. No matter what happens to me, would happen to him. Again, this might sound evil, but this is also logical. Confirmed then I resolve, Adam shall share with me in bliss or woe. So dear I love him, that with him all deaths I could endure. Without him live no life. Adam, waiting for Eve, is getting nervous, but he doesn't know what has happened. So he is preparing a garland to celebrate her, like when she comes. But there is a premonition in him, something unsettling in his mind going on, that something wrong is going to happen. Upon meeting Eve near the tree of knowledge, he confronts her. And then he sees that her state is altered, changed. And she's carrying a fruit, signaling something significant has happened to her. And there is this foreshadowing of the fall. She shares with Adam her experience, and she explains that she is feeling great and it doesn't lead to death, but actually opens up your way to divinity. So see, Eve knows Adam's weakness too. Adam always wants to be like Raphael, like the angels, and the way he goes on talking with Raphael, he wants to know about higher things. Eve understands that there is also a deep desire in Adam, although repressed, to become one with the angels. And she plays with that. So the way Satan tempts Eve is not very different from the way Eve tempts Adam. And she expresses a deep sense of unity and equality. Like she says that, see, if you eat this, you will become equals. She knows that Adam possibly cannot tolerate the idea that Eve will be superior to him in any way. Adam is confused, of course, but he again thinks about the situation in as much logical way as he can. First he says, but past who can recall or done undo? What is done cannot be undone. Point. Not God omnipotent, nor fate, yet so perhaps thou shalt not die. He first wants to feel that maybe Eve would not die. Why? Because he makes a strange logic. Okay, it's like he's trying to convince himself why Eve would not die. And he says that the tree the fruit was forbidden, but the serpent tasted it. So that kind of broke the charm, and the serpent has not died. So now it is possibly not that forbidden because it is already tasted. It's like somebody arguing that a poison will not work if somebody has already drunk it and not died. It might work for you, but he is not thinking along these lines. So he says, perhaps the fact is not so heinous now for tasted fruit. So it is already tasted by somebody or something. Profaned first by the serpent. What in Hindi we call jhuta, and in Bengali we call eto. So it's like somebody has eaten it. So it's not anymore uncorrupted, and its power has reduced. And then he says, by him first made common and unhallowed are our taste, nor yet on him found deadly, he yet lives. So the same logic, that the serpent has not died, so we will not die. What these two are not questioning is that maybe the serpent has not eaten the fruit. Why are they not questioning it? Because they have known this snake like forever. This snake could not talk, and now the snake can talk. And this only fact makes them feel that whatever the snake is speaking is true, because they don't know what lie is. They don't know how to hide truth. So they think whatever is spoken must be true because they have no knowledge of deceit, of lie, and who is to blame for that? They are guilty of one thing. And what is that? They are guilty of being innocent, if you call that a guilt. Then his argument goes like this. Nor can I think that God, creator wise, God is a great wise creator. So I don't think that God will destroy us. Though threatening, yes, God threats at times. I'll do this, I'll do that. But will in earnest so destroy us, his prime creatures, dignified so high? It's like a very good student has this confidence that my principal will never rusticate me. I'm the best student. So the same logic here from Adam. Set over all his works, which in our fall, if we fall, for us created. Like Adam has this idea that this entire universe is created for him. And if he falls, then what's the point of creating so much? Because earlier also he was expressing this idea that the stars are shining for us. Okay. And then he says, then everything will fall if we fall. Needs with us must fail. Dependent made, as the things are dependent on us. He thinks the sun is dependent on us. The earth is dependent on us. And when he falls, everything has to fall with him. So God shall uncreate, be frustrate, do undo, and labor lose. Not well conceived of God. No, I don't think that's going to happen. Because God will not undo his creation. Who, though his power creation could repeat, yes, God can repeat creation after our fall, but yet would be loath us to abolish. God would not want us to fall, because then God's adversary will say, we already know that Adam knows about Satan and his rebellion. Okay, so he is thinking that if we fall, then the adversary will triumph and say, fickle their state whom God most favors. Who can please him long? Me first he ruined, now mankind. Whom will he next? So Satan will say that God ruined me first, then mankind, then he will ruin something else. So God's reputation is at stake here. So definitely God will not punish us. So he makes these two arguments with himself, and he tries to convince himself that it's okay to eat the fruit. He chooses to join Eve, and he feels that in any case, without Eve, this place is going to be a horrible one, and let me just participate. What is the consequence? What happens exactly at the point when he eats the fruit. You remember what happened when Eve ate the fruit? The earth responded. So this time also there is a response, and it's called the second response. Earth trembled from her entrails. So it's like volcanoes coming up. As again in pangs, and nature gave a second groan. So it's like having pain of birth, as if it's also a kind of birth. Sky lowered, and muttering thunder, some sad drops, wept at completing of the mortal sin original. So, what is the sin? The sin is eating a fruit, or the sin is questioning God. The point is, eating the fruit is not sinful. What is sinful is questioning your limits. When there is an authority, the authority will grant you so called freedom so far as you don't question the limits. And then if you say that if I have limits, how can you call me free? Then you are called in different names. You're sometimes called a terrorist, sometimes an antisocial, sometimes a rebel. And we are really in doubt whose side Milton is on, because he was on the side of people who beheaded Charles I. The first effect is the effect of nature that is shown here. Nature is groaning as if in pain. But what about Adam and Eve? How are they reacting? The point is, they were not feeling bad at all. They were still under that effect of euphoria, almost like drug induced euphoria. And Adam was looking at Eve and he feels desire for her. Earlier, their union was directed at one end to produce offsprings. This time, for the first time, he is not looking at Eve as a baby making machine, but as an object of desire. For never did thy beauty, since the day I saw thee first and wedded thee, adorned with all perfections, so inflame my sense, the sensuousness in him, the physical desire in him inflamed with ardor to enjoy the joytions, the idea of sexual union as pleasure, which is forbidden in scriptures and which is celebrated by feminists. Why just feminists? It should be celebrated by all. Anyway, so Adam is shown to have this sense of desire, the motivation of being with Eve being enjoyment rather than production or reproduction. This is considered to be something sinful. Fairer now than ever, bounty of this virtuous tree. So you are looking better than ever. And they focus on carnal desires, which is again shown in a negative light, because that is what the Bible presents it as. It is shown as if lust replaces love, although it is not directly said that love is gone. Because when we will reach the final book, I will show you that no, love is not gone. So love is not replaced by lust. But yes, lust takes over at times. What happens when they wake up? Earlier, they used to wake up fresh and happy from their innocent sleep, and now their sleep is not that innocent anymore. Dewy sleep oppressed them. Sleep is oppressing them. So instead of providing them with rejuvenation, sleep is tiring them. Wearied with their amorous play, the games of love, lust, enjoyment, all presented in a negative light. Soon as the force of that fallacious fruit, force means the effect, as I was telling you, the intoxicating good feeling that comes with this fruit is weared off when it's gone. That with exhilarating vapor bland about their spirits had played, so they are having this symptom of a hangover, you can say, and inmost powers made was now exhaled, and grosser sleep bred of unkindly fumes. All dreams were getting cruel and unkindly. With conscious dreams, they couldn't sleep properly. Encumbered, look at the words here, encumbered, oppressed, now had left them. Up they rose as from unrest. So sleep is not restful anymore. And each the other viewing So they are like looking at each other as opponents. Soon found their eyes how opened, and their minds how darkened. Innocence, that as a veil had shadowed them from knowing ill, was gone. So, is veil a good thing? Something that shadows you from evil? If it cannot remove evil, it is only leading to ignorance. So, innocence is actually equated with ignorance here. And of course, when they are getting up, feeling that low, looking at each other, they are trying to pass the blame on to one another. Adam begins to lament. What will happen now? I can't eat and sit and talk with angels now. That is his first concern. But he is going to be denied access to divine conversations, divine knowledge, divine ideas. That is his first problem. And he gets conscious of his nakedness. They try to gather some fig leaves and wear it around their waist because they think that these parts are shameful. And they're filled with this anger, mistrust, discord. They are out of tune with each other. And so we see a complete disruption of harmony. Adam chastises Eve that you have succumbed to this deceit, and he laments that this has led to a great loss for them. There will not be any more friendship with the angels. And he says, how shall I behold the face henceforth of God or angel, erst with joy and rapture so oft beheld? Earlier I used to look at God and angels so freely, and now I will be denied access to that. Those heavenly shapes will dazzle now, this earthly, with their blaze insufferably bright. Oh, might I here in solitude live savage, in some glade obscured, where highest woods impenetrable. So he wants to somehow hide himself as a hermit, forget the whole situation, and he's really lamenting their loss of their previous status. And he says, cover me, ye pines, ye cedars, with innumerable boughs, hide me where I may never see them more. So he wants to be hidden. He doesn't just want to hide his body, but he wants to hide his whole existence from God because he fears judgment. He thinks that there is a place in this paradise where he can actually hide from God. And then he blames Eve. And look at his words here. Would you hadst hearkened to my words. Now, you remember what he had told Eve? That don't go alone. So he says, if you had listened to me and stayed with me as I besought thee, when that strange desire of wandering this unhappy morn, I know not whence possessed thee. What is he saying here? He's saying that you were possessed of this strange desire for wandering. Wandering means moving around. Isn't that something people say to girls who get attacked? People getting violent with them at night. People say, why did you go out wandering at night? Same logic here, that it is because of her wandering that this was brought on them. She is responsible. So yes, victim blaming, you can say that. Isn't Eve equally a victim of temptation? She is. And the point is, she faced who? She faced Satan, the greatest of deceivers. And she fell. Who did Adam face? Adam faced Eve. Had Eve become even worse than Satan? She can't be, because Satan is the worst. So if Adam cannot disregard the temptation of Eve, how can Eve disregard the temptation of Satan? And Eve is, obviously, she is taken aback. She is not taken aback by the fall. She can handle the fall. She is taken aback by the change of tone in Adam. And she says, wandering? You are talking about me wandering? Isn't this paradise all about wandering? Aren't we supposed to wander? And then she says, you are my master. You should have stopped me from wandering. So you are responsible. Hadst thou been firm and fixed in thy descent, neither had I transgressed, nor thou with me. So if you were not a lenient person, why did you let me go? And then there's this mutual blame game going on. Adam says, you are an ungrateful woman. I chose to partake in your misfortune. I ate the fruit to participate in your whatever punishment you're going to get. And you are saying that I'm not concerned about you. And then he says, but I regret that error now, which is become my crime. Adam is saying he's regretting his decision to follow Eve's example. And he says, and thou the accuser, thus it shall befall him. This will always happen to him. Who to forth in women over trusting. Look at the height of misogyny here. If you say Milton is misogynist, I would say, well, this is Adam talking. So if Milton is Adam, then yes, he is a misogynist. But then some of the critics say that Milton is of the devil's party without knowing it. Then how can we say he is talking through the voice of Adam? Let's call Adam a misogynist here to be on the safe side. And he says that whoever will trust women, lets her will rule. If you let a woman rule, restraint she will not brook. Brook means tolerate. She will not tolerate being restricted. He was probably not aware, definitely not aware of characters like Virginia Woolf, Kate Millett, Elaine Showalter, Simone de Beauvoir, who would come and undo his whole logic, thankfully. But here he is saying, just like the scriptures do, that women should be made aware of their boundaries and left to herself. So if you are letting a woman be herself, if you are letting a woman be trusted, if evil thence ensue, if then something bad happens, she first his weak indulgence will accuse. She will accuse you in turn if she is causing any trouble. So he is saying that if anything bad happens and if it is for some irresponsible woman, the woman will not take responsibility and she will pass the blame to the man. This is like, if you can always see it as a marital dispute, the first marital dispute in this universe, and it is going to be probably the last marital dispute too, because wandering means you are calling somebody breaking the boundaries, limitations. And if you have boundaries, it cannot be an equality in relationship. So they continue fighting. It has no resolution. Both of them blame each other and neither acknowledges his or her fault in the matter. It only increases their despair. And I want you to look at the last part of this book before we conclude. Thus they in mutual accusation spent the fruitless hours. Look at the choice of words here. Fruitless hours. As if fruitful hours were spent in enjoyment and something which they mutually wanted for each other out of desire. Now it is fruitless hours, but neither self-condemning. Self-condemning means they were not taking responsibility, they were not accusing themselves, but each other. And of their vain contest appeared no end. So there was no end to their fight. And the expression no end is like, you can say it's an opposite expression to the first two words of this book, which was no more. So it's a game of words that Milton plays. I don't know if consciously or unconsciously, but it's like a full circle that comes. And in the subsequent books, we are going to see how this fall is affecting them and what choices they still have, because it was all a matter of choice. What choices they still have and still exercise when it comes to accepting the punishment of the fall. Book 9 was the longest book, and I deliberately wanted to make it more like an explanatory synopsis more than just telling you the story, because this book is prescribed under different syllabi. But I advise you strongly to also watch the upcoming videos, which will be on book 10, book 11, and then book 12, because you need to have that closure. You need to at least understand how book 9 plays out in the next 3 books. Because if you have the chance of knowing the entire story of Paradise Lost, why to let go of it? I hope you're enjoying this series. This happens to be the closest to my heart, and I really look forward to your comments. And do share this video if you like what you're watching. I hope you are also enjoying our podcasts, our NibblePop stories, and don't forget to subscribe, right? See you all in my next video. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye bye.